It's a great delight for me to be here. I'm thankful for your pastor's kind invitation to be here. It's a little nostalgic for me because the last time I stood here and preached, it was exactly 24 years ago. And you don't know that story. If you're interested, maybe I can share that with you. When I planted a church a long time ago, I'm no longer a church planter. I train pastors, but yeah, it's a little nostalgic. And to be able to see God's faithfulness over the years. Nostalgia is better than amnesia, by the way. It's good for us to remember God's faithfulness to us. And but before getting into the heart of this text, I want to give you a little bit of the literary context of what's going on. John 4 comes after John 3, right? No brilliant insight there, but John 3 introduces to us the person, a Pharisee, a religious figure by the name of Nicodemus. And now we have here a completely different person here in John chapter 4, the Samaritan woman. So what do we find? We have one person who is a religious, upright, righteous person in Nicodemus, and you have somebody who is here who's been marginalized and completely shamed because of the choices that she has made. And then you have a person here who is a male. She's a female. He's a Jew. She's a Samaritan. And so all sorts of cultural, social, moral barriers that Jesus breaks in order to meet this person in Samaria. Now, Jesus was down in the southern part of Palestine. We call that region Judea, right, where Jerusalem is. And now he is trying to traverse up north up to Galilee, but he has to go through this middle region called Samaria. Now, Samaria is a mix of people who were involved with other local people who did not worship Yahweh, worship the Lord Yahweh in the Old Testament. And so a lot of the Jews consider them to be polluted, for them to be unclean as a people group. And so what they would do is when they were trying to go up north, they would always go down an easterly corridor trying to avoid them so that they would not be contaminated by this other group of people, right? I mean, does that sound familiar? People do that. But yet Jesus intentionally went through this place in order to meet this woman. Meet this one woman in her brokenness, in her fallenness, with all of her fragility and all of her sin struggles. He met her, and he was very intentional about that. So what do I want to highlight? Now, this is the big passage, which means there's a lot that we can talk about here, so I'm not going to be able to do that here. But what I'll do is I'll just focus on one theme and then give you some sub-themes. The theme is this. We all want a meaningful, fulfilled life. We all want to be whole. We all want to be blessed. We all want to be complete. We don't like incoherence. We want there to be coherence in our lives. We want our lives to matter. We want our lives to be meaningful and significant and consequential. We want to live a happy life, a fulfilled and blessed life. And so what do we see? Here are three things along that theme that we can consider. The first is we're going to look at the pursuit of a fulfilled life. Secondly, we're going to look at the elusiveness of this fulfilled life. And thirdly, the answer to an unfulfilled life. Or to say it another way, we're going to ask, what is the pursuit? Secondly, why is it elusive? And thirdly, how do we find the answer? Okay. We all realize that we are thirsty people. Or to put it another way, we are aspirational people. No one comes to Boston, especially this demographic. No one comes to Boston if you're in your 20s and 30s because you want to be mediocre. Right? You say, hey, I'm going to Boston because I want to be mediocre. That's my pursuit. I'm going to go to the city of Boston. There's a lot of mediocre people there. People come to Boston because they're aspirational, right? I mean, we always struggle with our identity inferiority complex with a slightly larger city south of us who are losing in the World Series, but what do we always say? We say things like, we don't have the best of everything, but we have the first of everything. I mean, it might be terrible, whatever that industry is or that product. It doesn't matter because we were the first. right? And, but we do have the best universities, and we do have the best hospitals. And so there's some things that we do well here in Boston. Again, you came here with a quest. Now, if you hang out with your parents or their friends or older aunts and uncles, and they come to you and they say things like, hey, honey, it's so good to see you. Boy, you have so much potential, right? Have you heard this? They say, oh, you have so much potential. Now, that's not necessarily a compliment, because what they're actually saying is, you don't have any actual. As far as I know, you might be an utter failure in life, but it seems as though you've got some potential, right? And this is what it means to be an aspirational person. And so we live our lives not with what we possess at this moment, but on our future-oriented dreams. And you need to be aware of that. So that's why there's a thirst. You thirst for this. You crave for things, a quest for more. We've got longings that we want to be fulfilled. That is why when Jesus came here, and she's already saying, as we see here, let's read from verse 9, the Samaritan woman said to him, how is it that you, a Jew, ask for a drink from me, a woman of Samaria? For Jews have no dealings with Samaritans. Jesus answered her, if you knew the gift of God and who it is that is saying to you, give me a drink, you would have asked him and he would have given you living water. The woman said to him, sir, you have nothing to draw water with and the well is deep. Where did you get that living water? Are you greater than our father Jacob? He gave us the well and drank from it himself, as did his sons and his livestock. Jesus said to her, everyone who drinks of the water will be thirsty again of this water. But whoever drinks of the water that I will give him will never be thirsty forever. The water that I will give him will become in him a spring of water welling up to eternal life. Now, how would you respond if that's what Jesus said? The woman said to him, sir, give me this water. He said, give it to me. Whatever it is, I need that. So that I will not be thirsty or have to come here to draw water. Remember, what Jesus is trying to say to this woman is to say that what I'm offering you, just as he was dialoguing with Nicodemus, where he came, he just wanted a seminar, and Jesus is like, no, I'm not here. I'm not interested in giving you a seminar. Right? I'm not here to just kind of give you information or because you want to learn a little bit more about theology. And he talked to him about conversion, talked about regeneration, being born again, and so on. And what's going on here is he's doing the same thing. He said the kingdom of God is radically different than what you might think it is. I don't know if you guys, I'm sure everyone notices, right? I don't know how often you point this out, but do you like the design, the what is it, the logo of this church, Kings Hill, right? You like that, right? It's technically, designers will call that a bilateral ambigram, okay, which means that the K is backwards, okay? Now, of course, that's very intentional, and that was the brilliance of your pastor or someone else who came up with this idea, that in the design itself, this church is trying to say we are a counter-cultural body of Christ. They're saying that Jesus reigns, because he's the king of this kingdom, he reigns over everything, right there, wherever that is. Bible over opinion, community over cliques, others over self, don't tell me, I got the last one, calling over comfort. Right, you like that? Yeah, right? Right. So you almost like you can hear the background voice of your pastor saying, I approve of this message. But that is a picture of the kingdom of God. That is what this woman is confronted with. By a king who views life through a lens or a high theory or a framework, or a worldview, critical theory, however you want to say it. He views life radically differently. It is an alternative way to live life. It is counterintuitive. It is paradoxical. It is ironic. It is inverted. It is subversive. It is upside down or bilateral ambigram backwards. It's not, we tend to think of life living this way. If in this world, in an aspirational culture such as Boston, people tell you the way you should live your life is right side up. If you want to make it, then you need to be strong. The kingdom says, well, the way up is down. If you want to know what it means to serve, to be served, then you must first be a servant. If you want to know what it means to be a leader, well, you need to first learn to follow. If you want to know what it means to experience glorification and the resurrection, then guess what? Then you need to first experience suffering and the crucifixion. If you want to be first, you need to be last. The way up is down. It is radically upside down. And so what Jesus is trying to tell this woman is that you've got tacit impulses, or what philosophers will call a implicit awareness, a belief. Because you need to know, we don't usually make decisions purely on the cognitive level. Right? Only philosophers do that. And you know, there were a lot of philosophers in Athens, Greece, in ancient Greece, right? There really isn't a profession for you to be unless you're an academic and you're teaching philosophy. Most of us make decisions at a kind of what I would call the kitchen table level. We make decisions that are more intuitional rather than cognitive. One philosopher said, we worship what we love, right? We are drawn to those things that we love. In other words, that we are drawn by the allure of whatever the culture has to offer to us because we are thirsty and we believe that those realities out there will be able to fill what's missing in here. There's something missing. I mean, we can hide behind social media. We can come here and all of you look very presentable and beautiful and handsome and pretty. By the way, my vision isn't very good. But you come here and then you present yourself a certain way. You want people you curate the good version of your life that you want others to believe that you actually have. But deep inside, we know that there's a lot of emptiness. Colin Campbell, in his book entitled The Romantic Ethic and the Spirit of Modern Consumerism, said that we actually, as younger people, are not engaged in what he called conspicuous consumption, but more imaginative consumption. What's the difference? Conspicuous consumption is you see something you like and you're hedonistic, I want it, I need it, and you go for it. I'm not suggesting that you don't do that. But many younger people, they are aspirational. It's imaginative hedonism. You look through Architectural Digest and you're like, oh my goodness, look at this beautiful, Gaggenau Sub-Zero refrigerator. Yeah, it costs $30,000. Wouldn't it be nice if it were in my apartment flat? See, you don't have the goods necessarily to get that. If you do, I hope you're tithing. But we want that. That's what we desire. That's something in the future, that's part of our future reality. That's why you're working so hard and you're at the most elite, prestigious, selective schools so that you can get into the appropriate professional degrees so that you can make a name for yourself. Now, you might be surprised to hear this, but one of my favorite movies of all times is Rocky. Okay? Now, some of you might not be familiar with the Rocky brand, but Rocky started in 1979. I remember the theater that I went to watch because it won the Oscar, the Academy, the award, the Oscar that year. And, Rocky Balboa, played by Sylvester Stallone, he still looks good. He's almost 80, right? And then, of course, after 5 Rocky or 6 Rocky movies, and then they had this new, right, they pivoted because they're smart. That's how they milk it, right? Milk the brand. And it went to Creed 1, Creed 2, and then there was Creed 3, right? The problem with, and I like Creed, right? The problem with Creed 3 is that how can you have a Rocky movie without Rocky? Right? That was my problem with that, right? I mean, you had little Creed, Michael Jordan, whatever his middle initial is. But the point is this: when you go back to 1979, here's Rocky. He's a guy who grew up in the streets of Philadelphia, and he wants to like know that he's actually more than what everyone sees him as. So he gets this amazing opportunity to go up against the greatest boxer of all times, right? Apollo Creed, right? He's the heavyweight champion of the world. This man is an impressive, smart boxer. And so Sylvester Stallone, this kind of, guy who's kind of bumbling around in the streets of Philadelphia, gets this opportunity to fight him. Now, right before the fight, this is what he says to his wife, Adrian. This is what he said. He said, I don't think I'm going to win, I'm not interested in that. I just want to go the distance so that I will know that I'm not a bum. I said, how profound, even if it came from Rocky Balboa. Because he knew deep inside, we all know deep inside that there is this kind of huge bummishness, right? That we don't want people to find us out and to find out that, oh, we're really a bunch of frauds, right? It's like, oh, no, we'll curate our lives a certain way. And this was a struggle that is not only a modern struggle, but it was a struggle even with this woman, which is amazing because this is an ancient episode 2,000 years ago during the ministry of Jesus' earthly ministry, but she was struggling with that too. How do I know this? Because she didn't just settle after 1 or 2 relationships. She kept on going into another one. Didn't work out. Let's try another one. Which tells me she's aspirational. Yes, albeit she's living in a completely fallen and broken world where I'm sure she's being abused. I mean, who knows what's going on in the background? Clearly she's marginalized and she's shamed by the society because, and the person that she's living with right now is not even her husband, the 6th guy. Going in and out of relationships. Now, before we pour judgment on this woman, which will be, of course, the easy Pharisaic kind of moralistic thing to do. Oh, look at this terrible woman, what is she doing? You need to be more upright. No, let me tell you, she represents us. In her fragility, in her fallenness, in her failures, Jesus is trying to come to her and to say, you might be like this, but let me tell you, you're about to experience something that even the greatest moral upright Pharisee like Nicodemus did not experience. That's what's amazing. Why? Because the kingdom is upside down. If you think that you're going to come here and say, well, I'm competent and I'm proud and I've got something to show for it, then Jesus is saying you're the last candidate for the kingdom of God. The ones who are coming into the kingdom are the ones who are complete failures. People who are not able to live consistently. The ones who have utterly disappointed other people and disappointed even God himself. I had the privilege of studying under a pretty well-known scholar by the name of Peter Berger. I actually graduated from Boston University, if there any BU. Okay, so I know there are a lot of Northeastern people, but we had a great hockey program at one point in our lives, right? That's the only thing we can boast about. But anyways, so Peter Berger, this eccentric, Austrian scholar, speaking with his German accent, smoking his skinny cigarette. They allowed him to do that back then. And he was talking about some of the stuff that he had written in his monumental work called The Homeless Mind. And what he was teaching was, he was saying there are 2 different cultures. One is what we will call a traditional culture, one is a modern culture. In traditional cultures, it's all about being able to meet up to the expectations of those in your society, so you want to receive honor. And of course, the opposite of honor is shame. And traditional people are good at that because they live in a communal context, right? Some of you who come from non-Western cultures understand that. And then he said, on the other hand, modern cultures, they're not all about honor, they're about dignity. And the opposite of dignity is guilt. And so about the way that they will pursue dignity is to be able to acquire it through their own accomplishments and achievements. And at that moment, when he was talking about this, there was kind of like a aha, like light bulb moment. I'm saying, oh my goodness, this is the reason why I'm always stressed. That when I try to think about the development of my identity formation, for me, it's bicultural. For most of you who have not grown up in a kind of a hyphenated kind of experience, like Asian American, right? That you're just kind of Americans growing up here, then for you, you just struggled with guilt. But I struggled with shame and guilt, right? I'm not suggesting that I'm more of a victim. That's not my point. My point is that for me, it was when I was thinking about, oh yeah, this is why I struggle all the time, because my parents, who are Far Eastern Asian parents, right? If you know any Far Eastern Asian parents, if you have Far Eastern Asian parents or Asian parents, they're like next level, okay? Right? They're never satisfied, right? They're never, of course they love us and they're pushing us, but they're never satisfied. They're always comparing us to, your cousin who graduated from MIT in 3 years, right? So it's like you're always like disappointing them. You're always a failure. It's like, oh, I'm always shamed. I'm never going to receive honor from my parents because I'm a failure. So you struggle with shame. But on the other hand, so what do? You say, okay, well, let me try to pivot and try to become more like an individualistic, expressive Western American and be all about my own goals and not be concerned about the community. And so you try to achieve dignity through your own achievements and accomplishments. And guess what? Well, that doesn't work out too well either, because then you realize everyone else is smarter. So, like, I was like, shame, guilt, guilt. And why? Is because deep inside, I wanted to know that I was consequential, not inconsequential. I wanted to know that I wanted to matter. I wanted to know that I had value. I wanted to know that I would be accepted and not rejected. I wanted to know that when people saw me, that there was something there. And so for this woman, she's saying, she probably at this point is like struggling with hopelessness, saying, okay, why do you think she was out here in the middle of the day in a barren place where it's really hot at noon? Because she knew all the other women would be there early in the morning. She didn't want to interact with them because she'd be rejected. And everyone would be, of course, judging her because of her life choices. So we all have desires. That's the point I'm trying to say. We all are aspirational. We all have objects of our desire that we believe will meet those desires and thirsts that we have. But why is it so elusive? That's the question I want to ask. Why was it so elusive for this woman? Why could, if we're pursuing it, why can't we get our hands on it? Why is it always ephemeral? Why is it always like temporary? Why is it that even if for a momentary moment that we experience pleasure, whatever that is, the object of our thirst, why is it that we get a short, temporal, momentary, left prefrontal cortex release of dopamine? Right? Why was it that just at that moment it's like, oh, okay, that was good, but why does it never last? Why is it always fleeting? Why do we get into this adaptation cycle and we experience something, we say, hey, okay, I've achieved. When did you ever get to that point and say, you know what? I'm completely content? Of course you're not. Now I have to apply to law school. Okay, I got into Tufts University, right? It's like, hey, it's tough school to get into, but now I need to go to med school. And then once I go to med school, then I got to decide on what sort of focus I want to have. After you graduate, you got to match to a residency. And then with a residency, you want to get into the best potential program. And for some of you who are extremely, extremely smart and got high scores on MCATs, then you want to go into orthopedic surgery. Okay? That's where all the money is, by the way, orthopedic surgery. But if you just go into internal medicine, then you go into internal medicine and say, oh, but after 3 years, I can do 2 years of fellowship, and then I'll become an attending. When does it ever end? Friends, it doesn't. It's what scholars call a hedonic treadmill. Forever striving, forever running, but you always stay in the same spot. Do you feel stuck like that? And the reason why you're stuck is because you are striving and you are pursuing, you're longing after an object that cannot satisfy. That's what Jesus is trying to say. He's saying, look, you're going after Jacob's well? Great. He was a great patriarch in our history. But you keep on going back to the well. As a matter of fact, the language that is used here when she says a well is just like a container, like a cistern where rainwater will come. But it's always stagnant, can easily get polluted. And Jesus says, what I'm offering you is a different kind of object for your longings and your desires and your pursuits. You know what that is? It's a spring welling up to eternal life. It's a flowing water. That's why you prefer spring water over purified water, right? Right? If most of us know the difference, right? It's like spring water. It's like coming from a spring. Purified water is just like tap water, and they're trying to convince us that it got purified at some point. And so the point is that flowing water, it's fresh. It's always flowing. And Jesus says that with a cistern, you can dump stuff in there and then just kind of get rid of the water. But with flowing water, you ever try to throw mud? Remember when you were young and we lived near a brook or a stream and we try to throw mud in there, like create our own little man-made, what is it, erosion? And I guess that's not a good thing. I can't say that these days, right? That would bad for the environment. But anyways, when I was younger, when people didn't care about that, that's what we did. We throw things in there. But guess what? The water just keeps on pushing it aside. That's the power of the spring, power of a river, power of a stream. Now, there is a place in Luke chapter 12 where it's very, very interesting because Jesus is talking about money, and then this younger brother who wasn't getting his share of the inheritance, and he wanted his brother to share, right, because the older brother got the lion's share, right? It's a primogeniture. It was a principle where the first one got most of it. Anyway, so he comes to Jesus and says, hey, you talk a lot about money, so, hey, can you tell my, older brother to share? And you know what Jesus says? He says, who made me an arbitrator over this? Do I look like a wealth manager? I mean, that's essentially what he's saying. That's the standard version, you know? He's like, say, well, what do you mean? And Jesus says this. He says, a man does not consist of the abundance of his possessions. Or literally is translated, a man does not exist. Did I just say exist? No, consist, right? Yeah, man does not exist in the abundance of his possessions. So he's saying, if you come after me, thinking that I'm going to provide you all the goodies and the benefits, I think you misunderstand what I'm here for. So what about some of us? Hey, just get me into med school. Am I asking too much, God? Come on. Hey, I'm 27, right? I've been patient, Lord. Just bring me a nice, wonderful Christian woman or a man, right? Just, I'm at this point, I'm not even being that picky. Just please, right? Oh, and come on. I mean, the bank hasn't been doing that well, but I think, hey, the inflation's getting a little bit handled a little bit better. At the end of this quarter, please, could I finally get the bonus that I deserve for my hard effort? Possibly even a promotion. Come on, I've been an associate forever. When am I gonna get a promotion to be senior associate, right? Or to be a VP in investment banking? We have all these expectations. And we ask Jesus to come and say, can you kind of increase and maybe optimize my life? And Jesus says, I'm not here to do that. I'm not here to give you a better life, whatever that looks like for you. I'm here to be your life. That's what Paul says in Colossians 3, where he says, Christ, who is your life? I'm not here to just kind of make your life more comfortable and easy, calling over comfort. I'm not here to do that. You've come to the wrong person. I'm not here to just simply quench the physical thirst that you have so that you don't have to keep coming here. I think you're misunderstanding. I'm trying to go deeper. There are deeper spiritual needs that you have that you don't even realize. There are deep spiritual needs that you have that you don't even realize, my friend. Because we all have this thirst to be wanted, to be loved, to be accepted, to be embraced. Ernest Becker, who was a renowned clinical psychologist who taught at Harvard for many years, wrote a book entitled The Denial of Death. And he coined this phrase, apocalyptic romanticism. Okay? It simply means that romance becomes the central thing in our lives. So it becomes apocalyptic. Right? So let's say, you can say that about money, right? If money becomes the central thing in your life, then that will be apocalyptic something, right? Right? Materialism, right? Something like that. This is apocalyptic romanticism. And so let me say it this way, and this might help you. When we take anything or something and it becomes your everything, then it becomes your one thing. That is the one thing that you look at everything in life. Everything you look at it through that lens. That something or that anything might be a good thing. Like romantic relationships, that's a good thing. Like marriage, that's a good thing. Money, that's just an exchange of currency. It's a tool that God has given to. It's a good thing in and of itself. It's not intrinsically evil. The love of money is evil, but money itself, it's a gift that God has. Sex, again, within the right context, right? I don't have to describe that, the biblical sexual ethic. Yeah, sure. But when that becomes the center, that becomes your personal center, that becomes your ultimate value, then it becomes apocalyptic, because once somebody threatens that, then there's something else that comes out. The dark side of you comes out. Because you say, you're not going to threaten that. That's my security. One counselor put it this way. Your ultimate fear exposes your ultimate trust. Whatever you fear right now, think about what your fear is right now. That's a major problem emotion among young people. Fear, insecurity, anxiety, right? You could throw depression, all that, but it starts with fear. Think about it right now. If like, even for a moment, I don't want you to get triggered, but if you were to just kind of be, what if that were to happen? Lose your reputation? Oh my goodness, what if I lose that? Lose my job, my career? Or what if I don't get into business school? Or what if this relationship doesn't work out? Or what if my husband cheats on me? What if my children don't end up being smart like me? I mean, whatever that fear is, okay? Whatever that fear is, that exposes your greatest trust. That's your greatest trust. And Jesus is saying there are things that are more fundamental to who you are, your identity, your pursuit in life, your meaning in life, your purpose in life, than those objects of your longings and those objects of your worship. Because people look at this and they say, what's with this? Why is there a connection to worship? What does living water have anything to do with worship? And of course, commentators are lazy, you know. Don't think that all commentators, your researchers, scholars, that you think that they're doing a lot of research. No. You look at this and they always say, oh, later redactor, a different author, they just tacked this on because they wanted to emphasize something, but clearly this wasn't part of the entire story or the narrative. No, that's so irresponsible. There's nothing here to suggest that there's a break in this dialogue. And so Jesus pivots. He says, oh, by the way, go and get your husband. The person that I'm with right now, cohabitating with, not my husband. Yeah, of course you knew that. That's why you're a prophet. And then what does she do? She pivots by saying, oh, by the way, let's have a conversation about worship. You Jews worship here in this mountain, but we worship on this other mountain called Mount Gerizim. You're in Jerusalem, Mount Zion. By the way, the preposition in this language, it says that you worship on this mountain. Literally, it's in. And you'll see why that's important. In this mountain, Mount Gerizim, or in Jerusalem, in Mount Zion. And Jesus says, no, you're going after the wrong object of your affections. You're going after the wrong object of your worship. It's in spirit and truth. I'll talk about that in a moment. What is worship? So if the longing and the desire and the thirst is for whatever object we think will satisfy our thirst, worship is essentially the same thing, that we're going after the object of our worship, that we believe whatever that object is will be able to show us what it means to appreciate beauty because I have an affection for those things that are worthy. Let's just say, just hypothetically, that I received a gift from a family friend, and they gave me a violin. Actually, this did happen. When I was younger, I hated playing violin, but I was a Korean American, which meant you're playing a classical instrument, whether you like it or not, and I hated it, and I was not good at it. But I was given this used violin. It actually was hundreds and hundreds of dollars. I knew it was expensive. I didn't know how much it was. But let's say that I found out later on that it was a rare inlaid 1734 Stradivarius. Okay, so for some of you who are not from New England Conservatory, you might not know, but a Stradivarius is more expensive than a Ferrari. Okay, so something from 1734, it's early, we're probably talking $8 to $20 million for a stinking violin. So let's say when I first got it, I didn't know. It's like, a few $100s, no big deal. Okay, there's a case for it, plastic case. Okay, no problem. Let's say I brought it to somebody and the teacher's like, wait a minute, let me take a look at your violin. And she looks inside and examines it and says, oh my goodness, put that down. You cannot touch it. I said, why? This is a Stradivarius. I said, so? A Stradivarius, this is worth about $12 million. Now, your reaction, the way you will handle that will be radically different before you recognize what the worth was. See, when you thought it was, it's just whatever, just put it in the case, or again, as long as it doesn't get broken, I don't practice anyways. But then once you realize that it's a $10 million instrument, Guess what? Now I'm never practicing, right? It's like, I'm not touching this thing. This is a museum piece. And what am I going to invest like $5,000 for what is it, whatever, like bulletproof protective case? Absolutely. $5,000? What is that when I've got an object here that's worth $10 million? The way that you respond to something of that great worth and value is radically different once you recognize and see the beauty of something like this. That is why the psalmist says in Psalm 27, he says, one thing I ask, that I may dwell in your presence, gaze upon your beauty, and dwell in your holy temple. That's the one thing for him. Not what we do. We take anything and something and it becomes our everything, and then it becomes our one thing. One thing for David was the one thing that I want to know. I want to gaze upon your beauty and to implore you in your holy temple. I'm not coming to you because I want something from you. I'm going to you because I want you. For some of you, I have 3 grown adult daughters, right? 2 of them are married. I'm still working on the youngest one. But if some of you are still single, here's my little relationship marriage tip for the day. You want to meet a man, I'm just going to speak to the ladies. You want to meet a man who's going to be more concerned about your interests before his own. That's the quality you're looking for. By the way, if some of you guys, single guys, you're listening, okay, listen, okay? Right? It's not just your, awesomeness, all right? It's not your being so handsome and all of that, right? I mean, that doesn't hurt. But the point is, you need to be concerned about your girlfriend or your future wife's interests before your own. That you simply are looking and you are engaged, you're sacrificing everything of your time because you're committed. You want that person to flourish. If we know how to do this in regular human relationship, why would we not do that with God? That's exactly Jesus' point. He's saying, look, you worship, you think that going here and following human tradition, you go to this place and you think it's some sort of mechanistic kind of way of having a dynamic to worship something. It's not that. It's about coming after me, to worship in spirit and truth. By the way, a Trinitarian, Father, Spirit, truth, is referring to the reality of Jesus. I don't have time to prove that to you, but that's what it's saying. Spirit, capital S, now referring to inner genuineness. Nothing to do with that. It's referring to the Spirit like it was talked about in John chapter 3. Unless you are born of water and Spirit, it's the same grammatical device. They have capital S in 3. Why don't they have capital S in 4? Anyways, that's a different conversation. But the point is that Jesus is saying that if you come to me, then you will have all of your affections satisfied as you recognize the worth of who I am. When you come to me with your pursuits and your longings and your desires, I will satisfy all of your desires because you're sucking the dirt out of the well and I'm giving you springs of living water. And the final question is, then how do we find the answer? Where do we get the answer for all of these kind of insatiable longings that we have that can't be quite quenched? Where do we get that from? And I want to end with this. Listen to what one commentator says. He says that Jesus was experiencing the ultimate torturous killing, eternal thirst of which the worst death by dehydration is just a hint. Or to put it another way, Jesus Christ drank the cup of wrath so that we might be able to drink from the spring of water. That's what Jesus did. How do we know this? Well, because it says here that he was thirsty, but we know there's another place in John's gospel, in John 19, where Jesus, right before he's about to die, he's on the cross, before he says, it is finished, what does he say? I thirst. And that's a prophecy back to Psalm 69, and this is what it says. They gave me poison. This is referring to the messianic figure, who's Jesus. They gave me poison for food, and for my thirst, they gave me sour wine to drink. That's exactly what he received. So what Jesus has done for us is that in order for your thirst to be completely satisfied and quenched and assuaged, I need to thirst and drink the cup of wrath. I need to receive the judgment of God in your place so that you might be able to experience the great intimacy with God. Because he goes on to say later on, after the woman leaves everything and goes and tells the entire village and says, I've met the Messiah, I've met the Christ. Everyone comes, they start believing. And you know what ended up happening? They convinced Jesus to stay and hang out with them. And you know what the text says? It says Jesus stayed with them. You know what that word is? That's the same word that's used in John 15 where it says, abide in me. If you want to know what it means to be able to have that taste of this kind of, your thirst being quenched and all that, it's abiding in Christ. It's being at the foot of the cross, walking in fellowship with him, saying, I want you. You are my beauty. You are my one thing. I'm going to relinquish all the other one things. I'm going to get rid of all of my everything. I'm going to get rid of all of these things because Jesus plus nothing equals everything. Jesus plus something equals nothing. And what Jesus is trying to say is if you have my grace, what I'm offering to you, the object of your thirst, the object of your worship, the object of your appetite, because these disciples are clueless as usual. They come back and they say, hey, you must be hungry. Hey, have some food. And Jesus says, the food that I'm offering to you know nothing about. Jesus is saying, I'm the food that will quench not only your thirst, but also your hunger. This is what you need to come and you need to eat from me because I am the bread of life. I'm the living water. I am the light of the world. I am the way, the truth, and the life. That I am the good shepherd. I am the door. I am the life and the resurrection, and I am the true vine. And Jesus, after he has this conversation with this woman, what does she say? She says, okay, all right, this has been a long theological discussion. Well, when the Messiah, the Christ comes, he'll explain everything to me. You know how Jesus responds? I am. Now, why is that significant? Because that is the divine name of God. 7 times, absolute I am statements in the book of Isaiah and Deuteronomy. 7 times in the Gospel of John. Not with predicates, I am the bread of life. No, just I am. He's saying, if you want to know what reality is, if you want to know what it means to know who you are, to be fulfilled and to be whole, know your purpose and your place and the way that you relate to me as the king of this kingdom, you need to know I am that king. I am the one who is the object of your worship. I am the one who's the object of your thirst, and I am the object of your appetite. How many of you are here today? If you kind of like open up your heart, right? Spiritually, to kind of open heart surgery, taking inventory of what's going on in your heart. You look in there and it's like the grass isn't green, right? It's yellow, right? There might be a lot of dirt, right? There's no water flowing through there, a lot of weeds, parched land. You just feel like, man, just spiritually, I'm in a wasteland. Here is the encouraging message for you, that God is always desiring to bring springs of living water to flow through barren land. That's what he says all over the place in the book of Isaiah. Scorched land, no problem, here's the water. Oh, you're going through a famine? No problem, I'm going to send the rain. He's always providing what we need for the deepest struggles that we have in our hearts. So what are some quick application points here? Make Jesus your one thing. Jesus rules over everything. Jesus is not just one piece of your life. He is your life. And when you make him your life, then everything else can be viewed differently. And as a matter of fact, you probably will manage your money better. You'll be able to treat the other person with greater dignity and respect. You'll be able to value people who are different than you. You won't otherize them, but you will forgive them. You're not going to be self-centered, so people are going to want to be your friend, so you'll have more friends. Right? No one likes to be around someone who's toxic and so self-centered and so... We don't want to be around people like that. We say it ourselves, but then there are times when we act like that. You're going to be a person who's got so much margin in your life to be glorious and to be beautiful, because that's the way God created you. And that we are going to stop going after these cisterns, these wells, these objects, all of these other things that we think will give us a lot of meaning. And again, don't mishear me, especially if there's some parents here that say, hey, I've been pushing my son to apply to med school and all that. No, I'm not suggesting, therefore, that Christians, in order for us to know what it means to be a child of God, that we need to be mediocre. You think that Jesus was a mediocre person? You think Apostle Paul was mediocre? Greatest intellectual that came along after Aristotle? If history were not biased, we'd be talking about Socrates, Plato, Aristotle, Paul. Graduated from the University of Tarsus with the equivalency of 2 modern-day PhDs at the age of 19, studied under the feet of Gamaliel, one of the greatest Pharisees in Judaism. He was an impressive person. But what does he say? If I'm going to boast, I'm going to boast about my weakness. Because that is the countercultural instinct of somebody who's all in for this King of the kingdom. And my friends, that's what God is calling us to do. What a wonderful mission. What a wonderful vision. What a wonderful purpose that he's given to us. We get to savor in that. Let's pray.